At 30, love was the last thing on my mind. I was making my Charles at a finance firm, where spreadsheets were my language of affection, and my cubicle felt more like home than any bar or dating app ever could. But then Madison, my co-worker and best friend, insisted I join her at her rooftop party. Known for her knack of pulling me out of my comfort zone, Madison had gathered an eclectic mix of artists, musicians she knew, and a few of our more conventional office mates. That evening, I noticed him, tall, lean, with kind eyes and tousled dark brown hair, dressed in a worn leather jacket and a faded t-shirt, probably featuring some band I'd never heard of. He was a stark contrast to my usual crowd of button-down shirts and tailored slacks. He was engaged in a lively debate with another guest about the best methods to restore a brick building. Their conversation, filled with playful jabs, drew me closer. He thinks slapping a fresh coat of paint on history is a good idea, he argued with a smile, while his opponent, a robust man with a shaved head, countered about preserving the structure. The man in the leather jacket disagreed, saying, "Yeah, but it erases the character, the cracks, and where tell the story." Intrigued, I moved closer, just as Madison joined me with a mischievous look. "Rosie, this is Charles," she introduced, nudging me forward. "And Charles, meet Rosie, the spreadsheet wizard I've been talking about." Charles turned with a widening smile. "Spreadsheet wizard, huh? Sounds impressive." "It pays the bills," I responded, feeling my cheeks warm. "But I can hold my own in a conversation that doesn't revolve around amortization schedules," I added with a wink at Madison, who chuckled. "Challenge accepted," Charles replied, his voice inviting. "So, Rosie the spreadsheet wizard, what do you think about preserving history?" We spent hours talking about everything and nothing. He was an architect passionate about giving old buildings new life, while I shared stories of long hours at the firm and the thrill of closing big deals. Our conversation flowed effortlessly, without any awkward pauses. As the night drew to a close, we found ourselves by the railing, overlooking the glittering city skyline. The cool air raised goosebumps on my arms. "This was fun," I admitted, my voice betraying a hint of surprise. "Yeah," he agreed, his eyes still on the city lights. "I wouldn't mind doing this again sometime." "Me neither," I blurted out, more quickly than intended. Our connection led to meeting Charles's parents, Bianca and Lincoln, at a fancy restaurant they chose. Initially, the conversation flowed smoothly as we discussed the wedding plans and the venue, an old, beautifully converted library. The caterer I was fretting over turned out to be more expensive than I anticipated, as their focus on organic, locally sourced canapés drove up the costs. Then, dinner with my fiancé's parents took an unexpected turn. Halfway through her lobster soup, which she amusingly called bisque with a thick, affected accent, Bianca suddenly fixed me with a piercing look. "So, Rosie," she began, patting her mouth with a napkin, "Charles tells me you're in finance." "Yes, I work as a financial analyst at a prominent firm downtown," I responded, slightly puzzled about where this conversation might lead. "Analyst, huh? Sounds like a key role," Lincoln added, his voice booming around the table. "You must be quite successful." Charles, who had been quiet, coughed awkwardly. "Dad, let's not get into that." But Lincoln brushed it off with a wave of his hand, dismissing the concern. He turned back to me. "Rosie, this firm of yours, it's a big player, right?" I confirmed the name of the company, a well-known global entity in finance. Bianca's eyes lit up. "Excellent," she exclaimed. "And your work involves investments, stocks, and the like?" "Yes, I manage a portfolio," I admitted, growing more uncomfortable by the minute as this felt more like an interrogation than a casual dinner. Bianca leaned in, her eyes sharp. "And how much are we talking about here, dear?" I was stunned. It was completely inappropriate to ask such personal questions. I looked at Charles for support, but he just avoided eye contact, fiddling with his bread. "That's personal, Mrs. Miller," I said with a forced smile. "Oh, come on, we're almost family now," Bianca insisted while Charles mumbled something under his breath, his face turning pink. I decided it was time to assert myself. "Look," I began, trying to remain composed, "what truly matters is that Charles and I love each other, not how much money is involved. Love is what's important." Lincoln chimed in again. Love is great, sweetheart, but it doesn't pay the bills. Frustrated, I suggested we change the subject to wedding plans instead. The next morning, still unsettled, I called my grandmother for advice. After recounting the events, her words echoed in my mind, describing them as greedy and selfish. While I tried to dismiss these thoughts, attributing them to her old-fashioned views, deep down, I wondered if she might be right. Months passed, and wedding preparations were challenging. Everything from choosing the venue to selecting flowers felt laborious, especially since financial discussions always made Charles uncomfortable. He would awkwardly excuse his minimal contributions by saying, "Things are tight at work." His parents, with good intentions, suggested more affordable options like venues on the outskirts of town and catering from a family friend in exchange for vegetables from their garden. Ultimately, I ended up paying for most of the wedding expenses. Charles would often compliment me, "You're handling everything like a champ," but his lack of financial input began to wear on me. Finally, our wedding day arrived. It was a beautiful celebration. The weather was perfect, the food was excellent, and above all, Charles and I exchanged our vows. The only discomfort came from my grandmother, who pulled me aside after the ceremony. Her face lined with worry, she whispered, "Rosie, honey, be careful with those in-laws. They don't have your best interests at heart." I sighed, rolling my eyes at what seemed like her usual caution. Yet, somewhere deep down, I wondered if there might be some truth to her concerns. The excitement around our wedding hadn't completely faded. There was still leftover cake on the counter when the first unsettling incident with my in-laws happened. It was a lazy Sunday morning, and Charles and I were enjoying some quiet time in bed when a loud thump from downstairs interrupted our peace. We exchanged puzzled glances. "Probably just the mail," Charles mumbled, dismissing it. But then came a cacophony of rustling paper and muted shouts. Curious and slightly alarmed, we threw on robes and rushed downstairs, only to stumble upon a scene resembling a bizarre, festive horror film. There, amidst a sea of floral wrapping paper and garish gift bags, were Bianca and Lincoln, my in-laws, sprawled on the living room floor. They looked like vultures scavenging through the remains, eagerly tearing into our wedding presents, oohing at some items and dismissively tossing others aside. "What in the world is going on here?" I demanded, my voice tinged with disbelief. Bianca caught mid-unwrapping, looked up, and flashed a brilliant smile. "Rosie, darling, just admiring your lovely wedding gifts," she chirped cheerily. "Admiring?" I sputtered, incredulous. "It looks more like you're ransacking the place." Lincoln, examining a crystal vase, snorted dismissively. "Relax, sweetheart. We're just sorting things out. Can't have all this clutter around, can we?" Clutter? These were heartfelt gifts from our friends and family. Before I could express my frustration, Charles intervened. "Maybe they should just leave the presents unopened, right?" His tone was mild, attempting to defuse the situation. "Exactly," I agreed, relieved that he wasn't completely oblivious to the intrusion. Bianca scoffed, "Don't be silly, honey. It's rude not to open presents. Besides," she added, her eyes gleaming with a mix of mischief and entitlement, "we might find something truly special in here." It was clear that special meant something valuable to them. Growing increasingly agitated, I watched as they sifted through our gifts, setting aside anything that caught their fancy. A silver picture frame, a set of engraved wine glasses, a fancy cheese board. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "These are our wedding gifts," I stated firmly, "not yours to take." Bianca, ever the manipulator, tried to soothe the situation with a condescending tone. "Look, honey, we just saw some things that would look lovely in our new house. You know, the one we're decorating." They were redecorating using our wedding gifts. Fury and disbelief welled up inside me. "What about the gift you got us?" I asked tightly. Bianca paused, her hand hovering over a box wrapped in fancy floral paper. She rummaged through the pile, finally pulling out a small, oddly shaped package. With a flourish, she handed it to me. I unwrapped it slowly, my heart sinking with each layer of tissue paper I removed. Inside was a cheap glass statuette, the kind you might find in a discount store, adorned with tacky plastic flowers. My stomach churned. This was their idea of a thoughtful wedding gift. Perhaps my grandmother was right. Perhaps I had married into a nightmare. This wedding gift fiasco was merely the beginning. Bianca's frequent shopping excursions soon became a regular ordeal. She'd call, chipper and inviting, suggesting a girl's day out. In reality, it meant me acting as her unpaid personal shopper. We'd visit stores and inevitably, Bianca would find something she absolutely needed. Then, at checkout, she'd perform a confusing shuffle with her purchases and mine, always forgetting her wallet, creating a mix-up with the bags, a tactic that left me paying more often than not. I found myself frequently covering the cost for both of our purchases, but Lincoln's visits were another story altogether. Weekends became his prime time for unexpected drop-ins. He would casually arrive, make himself comfortable on the couch, and spend the entire day watching TV and eating all the snacks I had available. When I gathered the courage to ask him why he spent so much time at our place, he bluntly replied, "Saves money on groceries and electricity, doesn't it?" I was stunned by his audacity. Did he think we were some sort of free service? Charles, always trying to keep the peace, would just roll his eyes and mutter something about his dad just needing some company. However, the situation came to a head during a birthday dinner I had planned for myself. Hoping for a sophisticated evening, I made the mistake of inviting Bianca and Lincoln to a fancy restaurant. The menu was filled with exotic French dishes, which they ordered with an air of misplaced confidence. Halfway through the meal, Bianca complained that her escargot was too slimy and pushed her plate away, while Lincoln managed to spray saffron broth across the table after choking on his bouillabaisse. The evening was a disaster, and when the bill arrived, my stress level soared. The meal's cost was astronomical, and naturally, Charles didn't offer to help with the bill, leaving me to handle it while he sat there clueless. Back at home, frustrated and upset, I confronted Charles. "How can you let your parents walk all over us like this?" I demanded. He responded dismissively, "Come on, it's not a big deal. They're just like that." I was incredulous. Like what? Selfish and entitled? "Charles, this isn't okay." He sighed, ran his hand through his hair, and said, "Look, I love you, but you have to pick your battles. My parents are, well, they're my parents. They're not going to change." Perhaps he was right. Maybe I had been naive to think I could change them or mold them into the ideal in-laws I had envisioned. But the harsh reality was clear. Bianca and Lincoln were set in their ways, and that wasn't going to change. The birthday dinner fiasco was a turning point, but not an end point. Their approach to gift-giving soon became painfully obvious. They would give us cheap, impersonal items during holidays and expect lavish gifts in return. For example, they gifted us a framed picture of a lighthouse for Christmas, then expected a top-of-the-line espresso machine for Mother's Day. Any mention of the disparity in gift values would result in a lecture about family and the importance of not keeping scores. In contrast, my grandmother, bless her soul, would never dream of asking for anything extravagant. Whenever I asked her about holiday gifts, she would simply say, "Honey, I have everything I need. Just come visit. That's all that matters." Meanwhile, Bianca and Lincoln treated gift-giving like a competitive sport. They would show up unannounced, a triumphant look in their eyes, brandishing their latest finds: a chipped ceramic fruit bowl for Christmas, a set of mismatched oven mitts with faded cartoon cats for Valentine's Day. Each gift felt like a subtle insult. The final straw came on Thanksgiving this year. Opting for a quiet evening, Charles and I planned to order takeout and watch a movie, just the two of us, hoping for a peaceful night away from the chaos of his parents' antics. As Thanksgiving rolled around, Bianca and Lincoln decided to make an unexpected appearance at our doorstep, laden with shopping bags and wearing self-satisfied grins. "Happy Thanksgiving, sweetie," Bianca chimed as she thrust a brightly wrapped package into my hands. With a sense of dread, I unwrapped the gift to find a gaudy scarf that looked like something from a gas station gift shop. The flowers on it were fake plastic, and the fabric felt like sandpaper against my skin. "It's perfect, isn't it?" Bianca beamed, claiming it matched my new coat, which was a vintage treasure from a thrift store. The scarf, on the other hand, clashed horribly. "Thanks, Bianca," I mumbled, trying my best to hide my disappointment. Lincoln then handed Charles a small box, announcing, "And for you, son, a little something to help you unwind after work." Charles's face lit up as he opened the box to reveal a pack of cheap, drugstore cigars, the kind that smelled like dirty ashtrays and regret. "Thanks, Dad," he said, his smile genuine, apparently pleased with his gift. That moment felt like a breaking point for me. Here I was, given a thoughtless gift that insulted my taste, while my husband seemed thrilled with his low-quality cigars. Despite the brewing anger inside me, I managed to take a deep breath, force a smile, and thank them for their thoughtful gifts. However, a glimmer of hope came soon after in the form of a professional achievement at work. I had won a coveted quarterly award, which came with a substantial bonus, a perfect excuse to plan a dream trip to Paris, a city of romantic canals and rich history, and a place I'd always wanted to visit. Fluent in French, I felt this was the perfect destination for Charles and me to have some time alone, away from the overbearing presence of his parents. However, news travels fast, especially to those keen on intruding. When Bianca and Lincoln learned of our travel plans, they quickly expressed their interest. "Paris, huh?" Bianca said, her eyes gleaming with an unsettling eagerness. "Sounds delightful. We've always wanted to see those gondolas up close." "Actually," I interjected, trying to remain polite, "this trip is just for Charles and me, a little romantic getaway." Lincoln scoffed, "Come on, Rosie, don't be selfish. We've never been to Europe, let alone Paris. Think of the pictures." This wasn't just about a photo opportunity with gondolas, it was about taking a much-needed break from their smothering presence. "I'm sorry," I said firmly, "but this is a trip for two." My polite refusal triggered an epic meltdown. They called me selfish and greedy, accusing me of trying to alienate Charles from his family. The worst part was Charles's reaction. Ever the peacemaker, he suggested maybe they could join, and it wouldn't be so bad. That's when I realized this was no longer just about a vacation. This was about setting boundaries, about respect, and about whether our marriage could withstand his parents' constant intrusions. I looked at Charles, my voice cold. "Absolutely not. This is our trip, and they are not invited." The argument that followed was intense and painful. Harsh words were exchanged, and by the end, a heavy silence settled between us, marking a stark realization about the challenges we faced together. We found ourselves increasingly distant within our own home, a cold war festering in the space that had once brimmed with happiness. Days melded into one another, marked by a heavy silence that underscored the growing gap between Charles and me. I avoided any contact with his parents, their mere thoughts evoking a wave of nausea due to their incessant, entitled demands. Charles, meanwhile, maintained his self-imposed isolation, barely uttering a good morning as we crossed paths in the kitchen. Then, on an unassuming Saturday morning, I awoke to an eerily empty apartment, an unsettling pit forming in my stomach. My phone vibrated on the nightstand, its notification tone grating on my already frayed nerves. I glanced at the screen and felt a chill. There were airline ticket confirmations for 3 to Paris, all purchased using my account. As panic clawed up my throat, the grim reality dawned on me. Charles, in a move of breathtaking audacity, had accessed our shared bank account for not only book his ticket, but also 2 others for his overbearing parents, alongside hotel reservations funded by my hard-earned money. The betrayal ignited a furious anger within me, erasing any remnants of affection I still harbored. My fingers raced across my phone screen, canceling the return flights and hotel bookings. With a steely resolve, I then revoked Charles's access to my bank account, an act of defiance against their overwhelming selfishness. A few hours later, my phone rang incessantly. Charles's name flashed on the display, but I let it go to voicemail. The notification for his message popped up shortly after. His voice, tinged with panic and anger, demanded to know my whereabouts and the status of the tickets. I deleted the message without listening. Following this were numerous texts from both Charles and Bianca, a blend of demands, accusations, and veiled threats. Charles's final message, however, elicited a dark chuckle from me. "If you don't give me back access to the account and get us on that damn plane, Rosie, we're done. Consider this your divorce notice." Empowered by this declaration, I took decisive action. I contacted a lawyer, each step towards independence, lifting the weight from my shoulders. Charles's pronouncement of divorce felt less like a threat and more like a liberation. I didn't sit around waiting for him to return, remorseful and defeated. Instead, packing became a cathartic exercise. Clothes were folded into suitcases, knickknacks packed into boxes, each item stowed away, signaling my readiness to move forward from the wreckage of a marriage undermined by disrespect and selfishness. The tacky trinkets and mismatched sets from Bianca and Lincoln remained untouched. I arranged them on the living room floor, creating a garish monument to their selfishness, a final act of defiance before I closed the door on that tumultuous chapter of my life. Arriving at Grandma's house, the familiar scent of cinnamon rolls and the cozy, worn furniture enveloped me like a warm hug. Tears streamed down my face as I poured out my heartache, recounting every painful detail. Grandma listened with a patient, sad smile, her voice soft yet tinged with a hint of "I told you so," mixed predominantly with concern. "Sometimes, honey, you have to learn things the hard way," she said. A newfound determination firmed in my voice. "Maybe this is for the best," I mused. "Now I know what to look for and what to steer clear of." Days later, a sudden knock at the door interrupted the peaceful afternoon, causing my heart to jump. Before I could react, Grandma gently nudged me toward the back room. Peering through the curtains, I saw Charles on the doorstep, his demeanor lost and despondent. "Rosie, please," he pleaded desperately. "Let me explain." Grandma cracked open the door, her expression inscrutable. Charles rushed into a hurried apology, spewing words about realizing his mistakes and wanting to distance himself from his parents. The anger I had been managing to keep under control flared up once again. I stepped into the hallway, my eyes cold with fury. "Distance yourself?" I scoffed. "You were about to use my money to take them on a vacation. This isn't about you seeing the light. It's about you being comfortable while I foot the bills and buy your parents gifts." He opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off sharply. "No, Charles, this is over. I don't want to build a life with someone who prioritizes comfort over respect, or someone who lets his parents trample over him and his wife. I deserve better than that." Charles's face fell, yet I found no sympathy within me. The door closed behind him, sealing shut with a resounding echo in the ensuing silence. Perhaps Grandma had a point. This was not a conclusion, but a fresh start. It heralded the possibility of a better existence, one devoid of demanding in-laws, built on respect, and perhaps, eventually, a love that was genuine and purposeful.